Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm a tech philosopher and the founder of Impeak. My guest on today's podcast is Joe O'Rourke from Forum3, that is the team behind the Starbucks Odyssey program. I've been wanting to speak to these guys ever since I've heard about their work, and we were finally able to make it happen. There's a lot to learn about how Starbucks is using Web3 technology to build a truly modern and innovative loyalty program. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. I think first things first, Joe, I wanted to get a better understanding of Forum 3, how it all started. How did you land Starbucks as your first? Oh, is it first client? Or is it like, how did that all come
Technically
about?
not, I guess. Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for having me here. Um the formation of Forum 3 is such an interesting story, and it kind of starts. It's like this three-headed monster that converges on each other, right? Where you've got Adam and Andy and all of the things that they were doing, and so myself, Adam Brotman, and Andy Sack are the three co-founders of Forum 3. Andy is a Web 1 entrepreneur, Web 2 VC, and now kind of like hybrid here in Web 3. And he had started a crypto fund, and he was the one that kind of red pilled Adam on Web 3 and everything like that. And so Adam was advising Andy with the fund and got very into NFTs in the summer of 2021 and was really diving deep down the rabbit hole. And then meanwhile, I'm over on this other side, kind of converging in a different way. And I had been in the space since 2017 and doing, content. I started podcasting back in 2018. So I'd always kind of stuck around and been really close to everything that was going on, and mostly as a hobby and content creator, and I'd always wanted to kind of get into it full time. And in that that spring summer of 2021, I was doing a lot of stuff with play to earn gaming, and specifically like Axie Infinity, and I was tweeting about it a ton. And because of that, I got messaged by a gentleman named Drew Austin, who he's a VC guy in the space. He is a co-founder of Knights of Degen project, and he messaged me and he's like, "Hey, I'm having this retreat at my house in Warwick, New York, and I'd love for you to come. Here's the guest list, and I'd love for you to come and chat about play to earn gaming." And I was like, okay, I have to get to this. I saw the guest list and I was like, I don't belong in the same room as these people. And so I was like, Drew, no problem. I'll be there. What day is it? Or what weekend is it? And he goes, oh, it's Tuesday. And like, this is like 3 or 4 days prior to the event. And I was supposed to be in Pittsburgh, at my job. I was a medical sales manager in Pennsylvania and upstate New York at the time. And I was like, all right, I'll be there. And so the Friday prior, I quit my job to go to this thing at Drew's house. And at Drew's house is where I met Adam. And we hit it off right away. We talked for hours and hours and hours that day. And the next week, I was doing work with Adam and Andy, and that's how Forum 3 was born. And so it was this really crazy kind of set of circumstances that put us on a path to all, work together. And from there, we had, it was formed around this kind of thesis around play to earn game mechanics and how that could relate to things like loyalty and things like that. And so we really had this insight that those games were broken, and it was because of the fact that the incentive structure wasn't correct, meaning all of those play to earn games at the time were very extractive economies. They were all funded by the user, and so everything the user was doing to earn was immediately extracted from that economy. And, it would tank token prices, it would tank asset prices, and ultimately be a really terrible experience for the user. And so as we're thinking about why these things weren't working, we kind of reframed it in the sense of like, well, what if you did this with a brand, right? That has the funding and kind of brand goodwill and reputation to not to actually fund the ecosystem themselves as far as what's being rewarded and created, right? And so when you reframe it in that capacity, it's a totally different concept that actually works, right? And so, this was kind of the basis of our thought around Starbucks and Odyssey when we got to there. And it wasn't our first client. We had a couple prior, and we did the Ben Mesrick project with best-selling author Ben Mesrick, and that was a really cool project around him writing a screenplay about the Web3 space, which is really cool. So that's still going on. We still work with Ben. And then we had a couple other small things that were, kind of learning experiences for us. And it's interesting, right? When we had right at that same time, this is kind of July of 2021, June, July of 2021. Adam, obviously, who's the former chief digital officer of Starbucks, has a great relationship with Howard Schultz, and Howard was basically talking to us about Web3 in general. And at the time, he was not the CEO of Starbucks. And so, but he was just interested in what Adam was doing inside of Web3. And, fast forward a couple months, and Howard goes back to be the CEO of Starbucks for the third time. And it was just very much kind of the perfect storm of that, him having interest in what we were doing and going back to Starbucks for the third time. And, he kind of approached Adam and said, "Hey, do you want to do this, for and with Starbucks?" And that's how that all happened. So, with Adam's history at Starbucks and kind of trust inside the ecosystem over there, and we were very, very uniquely positioned to, one, get the deal, and two, kind of understand what Starbucks needed and wanted to be able to make something like Odyssey happen.
That's amazing. What a great story. And it's always like that one person who gets it, right? Like there needs to be one person, I had a similar story with Steinway Pianos for my other company that is a marketing agency. And a few years ago, I was like trying to explain to them what they need to do. And it's like one person, one of the managing directors got it. And now he gets NFTs and I'm explaining to them what they can do with it, right? And you need that one person who is going to be championing to make a change. And
I would even say, like, for this situation, what was extremely beneficial and powerful was it was the person top down, right? Like typically it's you have someone in the middle who gets it and has to champion it all the way up. This was a situation in which we had buy-in from the very top from day one, which was such a huge driver to, I think, being able to get it done so quickly and have buy-in from everybody else. And, it's really interesting, though, the amount of education that it takes to kind of get a whole organization there, right? Like the Starbucks team has been so incredible to work with, and they've gotten it from day one, but it still takes so much education, right? Like we live in this bubble where we, live and play in this all the time, every day. And it's, you really have to start from square one with everybody there to really demonstrate the value of this stuff, right? And like, why is this better than what we're doing now? What's the capabilities and things like that. And so that was a really fun kind of challenge that we had, which was just educating all of the teams and people involved. I mean, it really takes a village to kind of execute something like this. So it was really fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about the team education. How did you make that happen? Because that's so hard, right? Like, you're a team of 3 people. You're designing everything, and then you're, I guess, hiring people to help you with like community management and all these things, right? But the just the piece of actually educating the team of a company, and I assume that this needs to be done to the person who actually serves the coffee, like eventually, right? Like, it's important that they all understand the implications of that. And a company like Starbucks, how many people work for
Yes,
Starbucks?
it's great. It's a great question, right? So you have So at the time, yeah, we were 4 people. It was me, Adam, Andy, and our first employee was Morgan Matoski, and she's a rock star. And we flew out to Starbucks in May of last year of 2022 and met with essentially, we kind of had 2 or 3 full days of kind of meeting with all the different cross-functional teams, right? And so we met with every different kind of marketing, we met with coffee education, we met with loyalty and obviously upper management, things like that. And really our goal there when we went there was not to pitch anything, right? It was not to pitch an idea of Odyssey at the time. It wasn't that wasn't really a thing yet. But it was more so, hey, here's what Web3 tech is. Here's what NFTs are. Here's what they would enable you to do in a way that you're not doing now. And really that was the angle that we came from it with on the education side. And it wasn't to kind of force anything or an idea down anybody's throat. It was, here's what it is and how it works. Do you think that this would fit into anything that you're looking to do with inside your programs, right? And our hope was, luckily, what happened, right? The loyalty team immediately understood the value and almost said to us, hey, we've actually been looking for something like this for a long time. And when you think about why that is, it's, Starbucks, the loyalty program has 27 million active monthly members, right? And so a program like they have now is huge, and it's scaled so massively, and there's a huge cost to running a program like that, right? Because the way it works now, it's very kind of one way, single player. I'm giving you extra as a consumer. I'm giving you extra visits and extra spend for essentially what equates to discount, right? And so everything you do inside that type of ecosystem has a direct cost to your discount line. And so basically what the Starbucks loyalty team has is all types of data and research on kind of what their loyalty customer wants out of a program. And the things that they were saying that they wanted become super cost prohibitive at scale like that, right? And so in that current format, and so they really immediately grabbed this thought of, okay, we can tap into this intangible brand value that we have and kind of create this new kind of game layer on top of our loyalty program to help really engage and reward customers in a different and unique way from an experiential standpoint and things like that, right? And so that's kind of how that all evolved and developed. But to your other point of like, yeah, it eventually this will need to get educated all the way down to the barista level, because now you literally have customers coming in doing specific actions for their credit inside of Odyssey. And so it's kind of funny to see because it's still such a small beta program compared to their huge loyalty program that it's impossible to have every Starbucks employee at a barista level trained on Web3 and Odyssey at this point, but like eventually it will all happen. But it kind of starts from that top down, and it took us going to each of these different departments and talking about Web3 to see where they thought the value was.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's one of the places where we could help. Like there are so many opportunities here. So the thing about doing this with blockchain, and when I say this, I mean the loyalty program, is that it's like loyalty program on a steroid. It's just so much possible. Just because you have that stamp in your wallet, you can now get access. Imagine, let's say, if Starbucks has that, and then let's say some Michelin star restaurant or like some big food chain, like maybe even something like Burger King or whatever, right? That they have it too, and then they can collaborate. They can say, hey, everybody who has a Starbucks a stamp, on 29th of July, they can all come and get free, Burger King, right? And then Starbucks can do the same thing. They can say like anybody who has a Burger King stamp can come in on Friday morning at 9 a.m. and get a free, like that's just one of the things. Or like, maybe a TV network comes in and says, hey, I'm going to give 3-month free access to Netflix to Starbucks, stamp holders, right? So there are all of these opportunities. This like a whole new level of marketing opportunity, a whole new level of creating experiences, intangible things beyond just getting some discount. Like the value, it ends up being that the value of the things that you get for that stamp really outweighs maybe the amount of coffee that you drink in a year. Like you could easily get a lot more, especially as we live in a digital world. And in most cases, it doesn't really cost a huge amount more for, let's say, Netflix to give access, or in most cases, okay, even if it's with Burger King or McDonald's or whatever it is, that like, maybe a pop branch, wants to do something like with a, with a happy hour thing. Like there's so many things, both on a physical level and on a digital level. There are so many things that can be done. That it's just incredible.
I love this specific part of the topic of kind of essentially why blockchain, right? It's the question we get asked very often on, why couldn't you do this in a totally Web 2 way, right? Like why are you using blockchain for something like this? And you hit on a couple of the really fascinating points to me, which is, one, for the first time really kind of ever, you have ownership of your loyalty, meaning I have something tangible that I can point to that says I've done X amount of work inside this ecosystem and I own that, right? And I can kind of buy, sell, transfer that however I wish. Or to like what you said, right? I can get kind of utility stacked on that because it's provable and stacked on that, not necessarily from Starbucks. It's from outside collaborators or creators or brands, right? And so there's this idea that, one, now I have something digitally ownable, provable that represents kind of my lifetime relationship with this brand. And based on that, the brand can reward me. But on top of that, also, now because of blockchain, as you mentioned, all of that data is open, meaning as long as I have you as a creator, right? As long as you have that contract address of one of these stamps, you can kind of add and stack value on top of that. And I love to use the kind of competitor example for this because, everybody says, well, why would Starbucks want that? Why would a company want their data to be open like that? Because, well, what if Dunkin' Donuts comes, who's their biggest competitor, and says, hey, I'm going to give you all a $5 free coffee or whatever. And isn't that bad? Well, I would argue, no, that's great, right? And I would say it's great from two reasons. One, the Starbucks user is now getting something for free from another brand, right? So they've gotten this additional value by having their data public, right? That hasn't been prior. So right now, Dunkin' would have no specific way to know that I was a Starbucks power user, but if I own 30 stamps, they would, right? And they could reward me for that. Now, from a Starbucks side, well, oh, isn't that bad? Dunkin's taking my customer. No, because where as a user am I actually assigning that value that I got? Yeah, it's thanks for the $5 free coffee, but I got that item because of the things I did inside and my relationship with Starbucks. And I think like that concept is something that most brands aren't thinking about yet, and most people aren't really thinking about yet in terms of like, where does that actual value assignment get placed. And I think what we're seeing now is that it will get placed with the brand that they've gotten it from, or the brand that they've done the work in that allowed them access to this thing, not necessarily the giver, in the competitor example, right? Which I think is really interesting. But then as you mentioned, there's a whole world of collaborations that this opens as well. And the example I like to use for this is like, shortly after Odyssey launched, Starbucks announced their Rewards Together program, which what their launch partner was Delta Airlines. And how this program works, it's really spectacular, and you should check it out if you're either one of these rewards members. You basically can connect your Starbucks rewards account with your Delta rewards account, and every time you do something inside either of those ecosystems, you're kind of being rewarded by the other, which is really fascinating. However, it took them years to build this, right? There's all these internal systems and connections that they need to be able to even talk to each other to understand, right? Because and this is the power of the blockchain, because having this open model, open data, open consensus mechanism, everybody can play the same game, right? It's unlike now where each company has their own set of database and stack and infrastructure that they all have to build API calls for and things like that. And that takes time, it takes people, it takes money, right? And with blockchain, the collaboration piece becomes so simple, right? Where now, as you mentioned, you could just basically build a wallet connect from one side, and it doesn't even need a second party. You can do this almost permissionlessly in terms of, say, like you said, InPeak wants to add a contract address that of a Starbucks stamp and give people access to your platform. You could do that with or without Starbucks permission, really. And it just needs to be, you just need to be able to reach those folks, right? And so there's so many reasons of like why blockchain that go beyond like the actual issuing of a digital stamp. There's all this other kind of power that goes into the background of it, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. And it sort of takes that concept of competition and turns it in on its head, and it kind of it creates this sense of abundance as opposed to scarcity, right? For example, we and Zen Academy have very similar goal and content, and actually Zeneca has equity in Peak as well. And, we work very closely together. But now they're going to have their own channel on the platform. So we are going to have, our channel, they're going to have their channel. But we can easily collaborate with each other where, I say, like, anybody who buys our token gets access to yours, and anybody who buys your token gets access to ours. And we can create a program where we are collaborating, and now we are both stronger. We both have better value to give to our members. And so in a similar way, like I always give the example of, let's say, Princeton University and Harvard University, they both have, these stamps for their libraries, for their students. So now it means that you can be a member of Princeton University, and because you have that in your wallet, you can get access to all the data in Harvard University, and vice versa. And one other thing is that with AI, and this is something that as we are developing our platform, I'm very much like thinking about how we build this, where, let's say, if you come, if we add that contract address to our backend, and Starbucks users get access to that content, every time they watch a video, at the end it says, "Hey, I hope you enjoyed this session. You got access to this thanks to Starbucks." Because you have had that. It recognized that you have that thing in your wallet, and at that point, based on that, it's a reminder, top of mind, right? It's a reminder that, hey, you got this because of Starbucks. And then you can say, from there, it can direct them to an action. You can say, hey, how about doing this extra step to get this specific POAP, or it might be that it doesn't do anything, but it just reminds them, hey, you got this thanks to Starbucks. We can't wait to see you next time, in the in the shop, or like in the store, or cafe. So there's all these different ways that you can create, because we are now in in a war of attention. And everything that you can do to stay on top of mind for your, you can call them holders, your customers, in Web3, we don't like to use the term customer because it's not really a customer. They're like your, token holders, your kind of like your community. So everything that you can do to stay on top of their mind, that helps. And if some of that value comes from your partners, then then even better. And to be honest, like you could have, say, Costa Coffee and Starbucks Coffee doing an exchange one day, right? And say like, we're going to go into each other's shops, right? And then maybe there's like some kind of funny activity, like, maybe some kind of, competition, that today, Costa is trying to create a Frappuccino in a Starbucks, like there's all sorts of entertainment that you can create around this. So there's entertainment, there's education, there's fun, there's sense of abundance, all of those things.
Totally. And I think like you hit the nail on the head too on the attention economy piece where, a lot of the questions, a lot of times we get asked the question of like, well, why would you, because at the end of the day, like what Odyssey is, it's a kind of parallel loyalty program to the traditional one, right? And it's a game layer of the loyalty program essentially, right? So you're kind of at the end of the day playing inside Odyssey, you're playing a loyalty game, right? Where the TLDR is you come in, you complete journeys, you earn stamps. Those stamps level you up inside the ecosystem, and based on your levels, you're getting rewards or benefits, right? And but what's really interesting about that and the attention piece that you said is all of these companies, and I say this all the time, like whether it's Starbucks, whether it's InPeak, whether it's, any of these NFT projects, whether it's, more any and all Web2 brands, they're all need to start considering themselves as content companies. And it's because of this kind of attention economy and the way I think the consumer thinks about loyalty these days, right? Like loyalty used to be something that almost felt like the customer owes the brand, right? Like, and now it's very much the other way around. It's like the brand owes loyalty to the customer to keep you, right? And so how do you do that? It's this attention game. It's this content game, and all of these brands are out there right now creating content, and they're, whether they realize they're actually creating content or not, whether it's pieces of marketing or education or things like that, these are all pieces of content, right, that could be used to create a deeper relationship with the consumer. And so when you take some of that content and you package it in a way that is actually incentivizing rather than feels like push marketing, something really interesting happens, right? Like you're finding, for example, when you go into the first Starbucks journey, it allows you, or it accesses you to this virtual coffee farm tour of their Costa Rican coffee farm. And the experience is really cool. It's like, it's super fun to do. And at the end, you answer a question and you get your checkpoint and you get your points, right? And what's super fascinating is the feedback about that piece. It has been so great. And people are saying things like, hey, I didn't know that I wanted to know this, or like I didn't know that I needed to watch this, but it was really super cool and I feel like I learned something and I like about Starbucks and the brand. And the funny thing is those pieces of content had existed prior to Odyssey, but nobody was watching them, nobody was engaging with them, nobody was interacting with them. And when you take it and you package it with an incentive instead, the experience totally changes. Now you have somebody who really enjoyed that rather than felt like it was being pushed at them for marketing. And it's created this relationship rather than a selling experience feel. You know what I mean? And so like, I think that's what's really cool about what's happening inside of Odyssey. It's authentic content from the brand to the customer who already has an interest in this, right? So you're really creating a deeper relationship rather than kind of trying to necessarily grab someone new from a flashy piece of content that may or may not be used. Same with all the education that they have around coffee and things like that. So I totally couldn't agree more on the content piece, but it's really interesting to fascinating to watch. It has like this bundled incentivized thing that people are interacting with now.
Yeah, 100%. That's super interesting what you said about that piece of content, because I remember when we were trying to explain for the first time social media to brands, we were like, marketing used to be a broadcast. Now it's a dialogue. But now it's another level. It's a dialogue, and it's a sense of ownership, because now you feel like you're
Yes.
part of that brand, right? Like you
And
actually
almost
have
co-creation, right?
and
Like that.
co-creation. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's totally true. And that like I said, I think that relationship between brand and customer has totally changed in terms of like what the brand needs to understand about how the customer operates, right? And in terms of like, I want, as a customer, I want to feel like I have a sense of ownership. I want to feel like I have a sense of co-creation. Like the I love what you said about earlier, like using the AI in your product to kind of remind somebody where they got this access from. But I think like there's going to be this really interesting kind of crossover in AI and NFTs and even loyalty too, to kind of enhance this storytelling piece, right? Like the co-creation stuff. Imagine, you have like your a mid journey built in, and you've got customers creating latte art for a contest or something, right? Like there's some really cool co-creation stuff that could be used, and imagine, or they're creating designs for the next Odyssey stamp, and you're doing that from within the community, and there's some really powerful like feeling that happens there, between relationship that happens when you do stuff like that between a brand and you feel like, oh, I was able to participate in this and design this and help with and I think even just the fact that like we're so early in the Odyssey kind of beta program, where everybody participating now can give direct feedback that might be able to kind of enhance this program or further it in the future. And there's just so much really cool stuff that happens with this co-creation idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, there's so much that we could discuss. Hopefully, maybe I can have you and Adam back, and we can talk a little bit more about this, because I think a lot of brands watching this, look, that level of engagement that you just talked about, the fact that we will that people could sit down and create latte art, all sorts of things, that, and these are all things that it's a level of engagement that many brands can actually could dream about, like it's a level of staying on top of mind, and the things that you can do. And then imagine, like, as you use AI for these interactions, and these are all the things I want to build on in our platform, as people come in and engage with content, then you learn things about them. Like, for example, let's say if you learn that that I really like, one of my dreams is to go to CERN, right? And then, like, one day, maybe for my 40th birthday or whatever, like Starbucks does something where, like, I end up going on a tour with to CERN, and then that gets documented, and like, and then, like, and all of that happens because I was like, somebody that has had hundreds of stamps, hundreds of these journeys, right? So these are all the things so it's not always about giving everybody the same thing. It's about also that level of randomness that you can create, and maybe giving somebody something that may feel very big. Maybe it feels very small, but it's hard to to achieve. Like, there are all of these things that brands can do once they
Yeah,
get access to that data.
it creates like, especially, and this is another kind of like why blockchain piece though, like you can then kind of program back and create these like journeys or games within the game, right? Where I could say, hey, if you have the very, very limited scarce holiday journey stamp and a combination of these other things, well, what you've done is now you've funneled down those folks so you could give them something bigger, because that subset of people has been your most loyal, right? Because they have all of these things, and that's super interesting. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that thought process too. It's just like sky's the limit with the creativity you can do once you have all of these things, these NFTs, these game pieces kind of out there in the world, right?
100%. Well, thank you so much, Joe. This has been a great conversation. And I look forward to continuing it and kind of like seeing what you're doing and following your journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was great. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Make sure to follow Joe and Forum3. Joe's Twitter handle is bunchu.eth. That is bunchu.eth. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe to it on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. The full interviews are also available on my YouTube channel, The Somi Arian Show.